It started out like any other evening. Emily, a young woman living alone in her small apartment, was exhausted after a long day at work. She kicked off her shoes, placed her bag on the couch, and lazily plugged her phone into the charger beside her bed. The screen lit up for a second, reflecting her tired face before it dimmed into darkness. Without a second thought, she brushed her teeth, climbed under the blankets, and drifted off to sleep. But what Emily didn't know was that tonight wouldn't be ordinary. While most people charge their phones overnight without thinking twice, her decision would become the starting point of something far more sinister. At 11:58 p.m., as the city outside her window fell silent, her phone flickered once, as if touched by an unseen hand. The charging light blinked unnaturally, first steady, then irregular like a heartbeat. The device made a faint clicking sound, the kind you'd normally hear when recording starts, but Emily, lost in dreams, didn't stir. By 12:30 a.m., the phone's screen lit up again, but this time it didn't just glow. It displayed something odd. For a brief second, the wallpaper changed, showing a distorted version of her own face, blurry and almost unrecognizable. Then it went black again, as if nothing had happened. While Emily lay sound asleep, her phone was no longer just a device. It had become something else, something aware, something watching. This was the beginning of a night she would never forget. At exactly 2:33 a.m., Emily's phone lit up on its own. The room was silent, except for the faint hum of the charger. Normally, a phone lighting up in the middle of the night wouldn't mean much, maybe a notification, maybe an app running in the background. But this time, something was different. The lock screen showed no notifications, no missed calls, no texts. Just the time glowing eerily in the darkness, 2:33 a.m. Then, slowly, the brightness increased on its own, as though the phone wanted attention. The camera icon flickered faintly for a moment, then disappeared. A second later, the flashlight blinked, once, twice, like someone was sending a signal. Emily stirred in her sleep, but didn't wake. The glow from the phone stretched across the room, illuminating the corners where the shadows usually remained untouched. For a moment, the faint outline of someone, seemed to be standing near the curtains. But as quickly as it appeared, it vanished. Suddenly, the phone vibrated. Not once, not twice, but in a strange rhythmic pattern, almost like coded knocks on a door. The sound was muffled, but in the dead of night, it echoed unnaturally loud. Then came the strangest part. The screen flashed white, and for a split second, Emily's photo gallery appeared. But it wasn't the usual gallery. The pictures weren't hers. They showed her sleeping in her bed, different angles, different times, taken from the corner of her own room. But Emily had never taken these photos. The phone went black again. Silence filled the room. Unaware of what had just happened, Emily shifted under the covers, pulling the blanket closer. The phone, still glowing faintly, waited like a predator in the dark. Something had started, and it wasn't going to stop. The night grew heavier, and the silence in Emily's room became almost unbearable. Suddenly, without warning, her phone vibrated sharply on the nightstand. The sound was loud enough to cut through the stillness, but Emily remained asleep, her breathing slow and steady. The screen lit up again, and this time there was a notification. But it wasn't from any app Emily had ever seen before. No familiar icons, just a plain black box with glowing white letters. The message read, "Don't look outside." For a moment, the screen dimmed, and then another message appeared, identical in style. "Stay in bed." The phone buzzed repeatedly, one notification after another, filling the screen with warnings. Each one was stranger than the last. "They're moving closer. Don't make a sound. You're not alone." And then silence. Emily stirred slightly, her eyes fluttering open halfway, but she was too drowsy to process what was happening. She turned over in her bed, her back now facing the phone, completely unaware of the chilling alerts stacking on her lock screen. As the minutes passed, the screen dimmed again. But in the faint reflection of the phone's glow, something shifted in the room. A shadow moved across the far wall, tall, thin, and unnaturally slow. The phone vibrated one last time, but this time no message appeared. Instead, the screen glitched, showing static for a second, before flashing to the home screen. And on the wallpaper, her reflection appeared once more, this time with another, darker figure standing directly behind her. Emily remained asleep. The warnings went unseen. Whatever was coming had already crossed the threshold of her room. The room was silent again, so silent that the faintest shift of the curtains could be heard. Emily slept soundly, her chest rising and falling in rhythm, unaware that her phone had already become more than just a device. At 3:07 a.m., the phone screen flickered once more, but this time it didn't light up with text. Instead, the microphone quietly activated on its own. The small red indicator glowed faintly at the top of the display, as if the phone was listening. At first, there was nothing, just the faint hum of the charger and the occasional rustle of the blanket. But then it started, a soft, slow sound, almost like breathing. Deep, heavy inhales and exhales filled the tiny room. They didn't come from Emily. Her breaths were shallow and light. This breathing was heavier, raspier, and disturbingly close. The phone recorded everything. The sound grew louder, clearer, as though someone stood directly beside the bed. The microphone picked up a faint whisper, a voice too distorted to understand. But a few words pierced through the static. "Wake up, we see you." The breathing shifted, first near the bed, then near the curtains, then closer to the door. It was moving. The phone's waveform display pulsed violently, as if overwhelmed by the unnatural noise. Emily stirred in her sleep, frowning, as though some part of her subconscious sensed the disturbance. Her hand brushed against the pillow, and for a split second, her eyes opened. She turned toward the nightstand, where her phone glowed faintly, still recording. But before she could fully wake, the breathing stopped. Silence returned, almost too quickly. Emily sighed, rolled over, and drifted back into slumber. The red indicator on the phone blinked twice before vanishing. The recording saved itself automatically. The silence was back, but something was still in the room. At 3:29 a.m., Emily's phone, still resting on the nightstand, suddenly vibrated again. But this time, instead of messages or sound, the front camera activated. The faint green appeared in the corner of the screen, unnoticed in the dark room. The phone pointed directly at Emily, her peaceful sleeping face framed perfectly on the display. For several seconds, nothing unusual appeared, just the soft glow of the screen capturing her as she lay unaware. But then the image began to distort. The pixels shifted, lines streaked across the display, and her reflection twisted unnaturally. The camera froze, then blinked back to life. Only this time, it wasn't just Emily in the frame. Behind her, in the dark corner of the room, near the curtains, something moved. A tall shadow, almost human in shape, stood motionless, as though it had been there the entire time. The phone continued recording, switching rapidly between normal and glitched frames. Each glitch showed the shadow in a new position, closer to the bed, closer to Emily. One frame showed it leaning forward, its face blurred and stretched as though the camera couldn't process what it was seeing. Then, the flashlight turned on for a split second. The room was illuminated in stark white light. The camera caught Emily sleeping, but the shadow was gone. When the light flickered off again, The reflection on the screen still showed the figure standing right behind her. The display glitched violently, flashing between images of her sleeping and images of her wide awake with her eyes open, though in reality, she hadn't moved. Suddenly, the recording stopped. The phone's gallery updated itself with a new folder titled Tonight. Inside, dozens of images showed Emily in her room. Every angle, every position, none of which she had taken. The phone dimmed, its screen going black once more. The shadow didn't. It remained. The clock ticked closer to 3:45 a.m. when Emily finally stirred, her sleep broken by a faint vibration against the wooden nightstand. Her phone buzzed softly, then stopped, as though it was waiting for her notice. Emily rubbed her eyes, groggy and half-dreaming, before reaching for the device. As she picked it up, the screen instantly lit up, not with the lock screen she expected, but with a recording in progress. Her own face stared back at her from the display. She froze. The phone was filming her, capturing every move she made in real time. Her heart raced as she glanced at the gallery icon in the corner, which now showed a number far higher than she remembered. Against her better judgment, she tapped it. Her stomach dropped. Dozens of new videos appeared, all from tonight, each one time-stamped between midnight and now. With trembling fingers, she opened the first. The footage showed her sleeping peacefully, but the camera wasn't still. It moved, slowly circling her bed, as though someone or something was holding the phone. Emily's breathing grew shallow. She scrolled through more files. In one, the camera focused on her face as she slept, zooming in on her closed eyes. In another, it lingered at the foot of the bed, capturing faint movement in the shadows behind her. And then came the final clip, a shaky recording showing her rolling over, her blanket slipping slightly. A hand, pale, long-fingered, not hers, pulled the blanket back up to her shoulder. Emily's blood ran cold. She dropped the phone onto the bed, her eyes darting to the corners of the room. Everything looked normal, too normal. No intruder, no movement, just the faint hum of the charger. But the silence was heavier now, pressing down on her chest. Her phone vibrated once more. A new notification appeared on the screen. "Don't scream. We're already here." Emily's chest tightened as the notification glowed on her phone. "Don't scream. We're already here." Her hand shook as she held the device, her pulse pounding in her ears. She wanted to believe it was some twisted prank, some cruel glitch, but deep down, she knew it wasn't. Slowly, she raised her eyes from the screen and scanned the room. The curtains hung still, the dresser stood silent, and the shadows in the corners seemed ordinary. Yet the air felt different, thicker, colder, charged with a presence she couldn't explain. The phone buzzed again, and a new message slid across the display. "Look behind you." Her heart stopped. She couldn't move. Every muscle in her body screamed for her to stay still, to ignore it. But the weight of the silence pressed harder until, against her will, her head began to turn. At first, she saw nothing, just the familiar outline of her room. But then, by the faint glow of the phone, she caught it. A tall, blurred silhouette standing near the foot of her bed. Its shape wavered, as though it wasn't fully part of this world. Emily gasped and scrambled backward, pressing her back against the headboard. The phone slipped from her hand, landing face up on the blanket. The screen flickered violently before one final message appeared in bold letters. "It's too late." The room temperature plummeted. Emily's breath became visible in the air. The shadow moved impossibly fast, closing the distance between them. The phone's camera turned on again automatically, recording everything. Her terrified face, the trembling of her hands, the figure looming closer. The last thing the phone captured was Emily's wide, terrified eyes before the screen cut to black. The device fell silent. When morning sunlight crept through the window hours later, the phone still lay on the bed. Its battery was drained, its gallery folder full. The title of the last video? The One Who Saw.